Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. It is Thursday, which means it's one day away from that good day of Friday.
Oh.
And which, so I can
Let me tell
hear
you something.
everything I
Let
heard,
me tell you something.
everything you just did or felt,
that's
I heard in that little.
Oh, I can't wait for the weekend. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been rough.
I still think that, and I think if you help me, if you and Ken join me, then we can get it started. That we should start a new church.
I don't need to join you. No, I don't need to join you in that.
Ken.
And Kendrick is shaking his head. He doesn't need to join you.
Listen,
and you can embark on that silly venture on your own.
The first day Adventist, second day, because Sunday's the first day. Second day Adventist, right? And we don't wake Mondays.
I don't need to go through. I don't need to go through building a church, forming a church just to have that day off.
We ain't got to build nothing. Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. We got a long weekend every weekend. Second day Adventist.
Can you know who he is? He's the George Costanza of radio.
What are you talking?
Yes, because George Costanza will come up with the dumbest ideas.
It's not a dumb idea.
Just for a simple solution.
It's not a solution. I'm just trying to get
your solution because you want to be out of. You want to have more days off.
You know what people like you are like?
What's that, GC?
I'm going to do that. What is that, GC?
GC. You like the acronym. George Costanza.
So here's the problem. The problem is people like you and Ken. Okay, and Ken is the least trustworthy of all. I am going to start this movement, and then people like you are going to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I'll take advantage of it.
See, that's what I'm
correct.
saying. Yeah, okay, but you got to be committed. Okay, and I will write the notes.
I will.
Excuse me, since I'll be the Pope of the Second Day Adventists, I will. You got to write a note. You got to get a note from me to confirm that you're a Second Day Adventist.
Don't think so.
Okay.
It's your silly idea. You've been at this for years. And
you like it, though?
No, I don't. I think it's just you are such a George Costanza.
Okay.
You're GC.
I like George on that.
George is my favorite, actually. Yeah.
But but it would be. I think we'd be better off. But I mean, think about it, right? First of all, this whole thing of working 5 days, and some people work 6-7 days a week, is nuts.
Who came up with this rule, right?
Why not? Can I not just get the stuff done in 4 days?
Do you know most people are productive maybe 3 to 4 hours of their workday? And then after that,
and that's other places. I may not even talk about here.
Well, here it's probably an hour they're productive. And if you work for the government, you're productive for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, there are people, as you know, I think you told me, who they work for the government and they don't even go to work. They kind of like work another job. They just clock in.
That's correct.
So they productive though. They productive
somebody
for themselves.
else's job.
No, so you had a long week. It's just so hot. We're gonna say it every show. It's just so hot. And if next year is hotter than this, you see, they had an earthquake in Trinidad. Okay, every time I see those kind of freaky things, I keep on thinking 2012.
The movie. Yeah.
Okay, because think about this.
That was a freaky.
Star Trek, right? Which was not real.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, it wasn't real.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't know what you are.
Oh my God.
Okay, Star Trek wasn't real, and yet some of those things are starting to happen. We got the transponders and the things that you saw in sci-fi that like phone video phones.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, man, you'd see that on a sci-fi. Yeah, right. No, cars that can park themselves. These are things happening.
Yeah, they do that.
Okay, so if that can happen,
what do you think?
The big end of the world can happen. The teleportation one now, they're gonna have to try it out about at least 1 million times before I get in that and scatter my matter.
This is matter. Take that.
Okay.
You've been watching a lot of sci-fi.
Okay. I'm not scattering my matter from here to Miami, and they don't collect that back up. Okay. All right. And you see, because let's say, suppose they go where you have, and my brother-in-law is going to get really upset about me on this. Wow. Suppose the teleporters are the airlines evolving to the teleporter people. Okay.
No.
You understand what I'm saying?
No.
All right. So teleportation would replace airlines because I don't need to go on no plane. I just teleport from here to Miami. So suppose they get rid of planes and it's now Bahamas Air Teleporter.
Or
United Teleporter.
Because the airlines are in the transportation business,
correct.
They could just see this is
Remember
good.
I always tell you about? If you want to stay in business, you can't be narrow.
You can't be narrow. You
if you're in the horse and buggy, if you're in the horse whip business, If you were back in the 1800s, you should have been thinking you're in the acceleration business, not in the whip business. Okay? So if you're in the transportation business, if you're an airline, you should be thinking, you know what? I got to start getting into this teleportation thing when it comes, when
This
it's
is
ready.
so stupid.
Okay, it's stupid. Okay. Now, this is the thing that scares me. I don't really know if I want to get on the Bahamas Air version of
Well,
that
first of all,
teleportation.
you're getting there later.
Well, I don't mind getting late.
You're getting
Late
there.
is easy. Next thing you know,
You will get there.
my testicles reach, my head don't. I don't want to
You
get
will get there. You just will get
in,
there
in
late.
pieces. Or in pieces.
No, man. They
You get to the teleportation
have a
little
good safety
thing.
record. So you'll get there in one piece.
I'm not trying that.
You're just saying you get there on time.
Okay. All these airlines are late and a little near miss. What is a near miss? Eye on Rogad body?
You almost hit somebody else's plane.
I get to Miami. I have Roban breasts and Ed's legs. That's not a good match. That ain't gonna look good. You know, return to sender.
No, I want it after that.
Oh, you don't want it after that? Okay. All right. So
No, what's
anyway,
today? Thursday? No,
today's
man.
Thursday, it
I
is
am
Thursday.
looking forward to it. Every day I've had something to do, like in the evening, and I'm just tired. And then I just realized my friend's birthday party is on Saturday, so that's another thing. I have something to do
Yeah, don't
Friday
go.
evening. I can't not go.
Well, you can.
I mean, I can, but
You
then
can.
it wouldn't be nice. And
Well,
then
it
my
would.
birthday's the following week, and then I
Well,
wanted her to come.
You could, then if she doesn't come, it's okay. You know, we have to get. See, that's the
maybe-
other thing.
maybe
we have
I
to
want
get
her
out of
there.
these obligatory type scenarios.
I-
She ain't come to my party, so
Yeah.
that's now a whole rift.
But that's-
going to
you
take
know
at
how
least
we
3
go.
to 4 years to mend.
You know how payments go.
So how come I haven't heard from you lately? Anyway, you remember that when I invited you to that party 3 years
Yeah,
ago?
because you know we petty.
The other thing is, speaking of petty, well, 2 things on that. What do you think of your boy Cohen?
What
Have
did
you
you
been following
expect?
that?
Yeah.
So
What would you
you know what I'm
expect?
trying to really grapple, and I think that the whole world is. This is the whole thing. The whole world is shifted to everything's just crazy.
Hey, what do you think about Cohen? Is what I think
It's
about Trump.
super duper hot, and people are saying there's no global warming. Okay, it's hotter, but there's no global warming. Then you have a guy who he's on. It's as if they don't know there's video. He's on the plane. Okay, he's on the plane. He says to the world, "No, I don't know anything about
Right.
those payments."
Right.
Okay, this is basic stuff. Because what's happening is the crazy people are running the non-crazy people, and we're beginning to think we're crazy.
No,
So
we
it says, "No, there's no. I don't know anything. Ask Michael. He's my attorney." So later on goes, "Yeah, I knew about the payments, but that's not classified as a lie."
It's classified as a lie to me,
But I mean,
but to his supporters, I guess it's not.
I keep on, and on top of that, someone said the other day, to show you how far we've come or how far we've lost it. Imagine we're now discussing not the matter of whether the payments were made or he knew about the payments, but the fact that if the big Barack Iraq had been discussing he had made
payments to a porn star.
or another woman while the big Shelly Welly is around, okay, this would have been chaos.
Yeah.
But we're not even, your girl isn't even in the picture.
I don't blame her. She's melted off the scene completely because she doesn't want to
You
be
know
part of
why?
this.
She's waiting for the exact day of 2020 or whatever, whenever the presidency over, so she could say with them divorce papers. Okay? And the evidence is everything on TV.
I wasn't waiting until then. I swear to God.
But you see, that's a problem. If she leaves,
What?
don't you think that's kind of like another, it's kind of like another hit?
I mean, it ain't for me to say, I guess. I should take that back. It's not for me to say when someone leaves their marriage and all that stuff. But I just can't imagine going home to an individual like him.
But didn't she meet him when he was married too?
Oh, I don't know the details about that.
And it's a big lesson in all of this, Rogan Smith.
What's
It's
that?
hard not to give it that plane and that helicopter boy.
To give it up?
To give it up. Not you. I'm not saying you.
Yeah, because I'm
And
a
the reason I'm
different
not
breed.
saying you is because you ain't got it yet. But the reason I'm
It
saying
don't matter. It doesn't matter.
But she, I think, likes it's a big car. It's
I don't
a big
think
jet.
so. I think
You go
that
around the
causes
world.
much more stress than
And she ain't
it's
checking
worth.
for him. But she's checking for him. They're in a different section.
When he was going through the thing
You know
with
what I mean?
Stormy, yeah, I think he pointed out to Stormy Daniels, and that's where
Yeah.
Melania sleeps. That's her
She's-
room. So it's like a marriage of convenience, I suppose.
Look, you try to visualize things. I was always taught when I was growing up about not holding people in awe, and always
I don't.
imagining them doing the same things you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the basic human needs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The one thing I don't want to ever visualize is my man Trump with Melania. What's her name? Melania, whatever, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure she can't visualize it. What was she thinking then?
Let's call her and find out.
Call her. You have a number?
Because I don't know how Rogan can answer.
But the point I'm making is,
she may have
whatever
been
she was
enamored
thinking
with him
then,
because the guy has charisma. He's got personality. He has money.
okay,
He had power.
Why did start off with that?
I don't want to just go with the money and
Okay,
power because it ain't
all right.
always about money and power.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
Okay, I'm not saying no. I'm not.
It could have been a combination
It's charisma,
of all
yeah,
those
it's
things.
charisma.
All those things.
Yeah, I know.
He's a powerful
Yeah,
guy.
the charisma, power and charisma. That's it. You know, she couldn't find another power and charisma guy.
Charismatic guy? No, I think I don't know. You have to call
Okay.
Melania. Call on the
Well,
break.
you have the name. Yeah,
Let's
the
call
number,
on
yeah.
the break,
We'll
Ken.
give her a call.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to be back. Our guest this afternoon, by the way, coming up after the news is Myron Roll, who many of you know, Dr. Myron Roll,
Get it
who,
right.
as you know, get it right, who many of you know was a Rhodes Scholar of Bahamian soil.
Cyril. See, you
And,
already changed.
What's that?
I said you already changed.
So I say Cyril all the time. Cyril. And was a Florida State football player. How you say that? Player. Okay. And so he's going to be with us. And you two have something in common.
We do?
Yes, you do.
I know he's a role model.
No, that's not what you have
Am
in
I
common.
a role?
What you both have in common is you both appeared on the Big Steve Harvey Show.
Oh.
Yay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith of Steve Harvey fame, as also known as the Icon. She's an icon in the Bahamas. And we'll see a fellow icon. You know, I think Ken and I got to go out the room. We got to get out the room because you got Myron.
I did not win, and I don't know why he doesn't.
You got Myron. You got Myron Roll. He's an
embarrassing.
icon. She's an icon. Ken,
He's
you and
an
I.
icon.
We need to. I don't know. We can put this on autopilot. Let the icons do their thing, man. You know. So he's here, and that's going to be a really interesting conversation. Going back to this thing about Petty. So you see the stuff that's happened at BPL.
Yes.
And we know all the people because we've had them on the show.
Mm-hmm.
We've had Desmond, we've had Darnell Osborne, we've had Mr. Bastian, and it's sad that things come to this. I don't know the intricacies of the discussion, but this is what it always boils down to. And I'm going to morph this into discussion about Facebook in a bit. So there was a headline about Minister Bannister's response. Now, I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong and who's saying what and all that, but someone comes out and attacks you and says, attacks your character and says, okay, boom, 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 boom. What are they to do? They either respond or say nothing. In the world that we exist, if you say nothing, that means that the other person gets the credibility or the
there's a belief that that person must be telling the truth because you didn't respond to the contrary.
Okay, if you say no comment, I mean it's true, right? And so there was a response, and there's a response. And by the way, what we should be seeing more, and I feel very adamant about this, is we see very little in the public domain about what actually goes down generally in the public service, right? It's always this thing about, it's always a cloud about what happened. Anyway, he responds. And then I see in the newspaper response that was petty to respond. Now, in theory, first of all, even if it was $1, right? It's $1. Okay? But why would you acquaint being, giving the fact being petty? I don't know.
I don't acquaint it as being petty. I believe after the story broke about Miss Osborne, the letter that she wrote, Mr. Bannister was not even speaking to the media about it. I think he'd been grilled.
That release hadn't been done, it wouldn't have been any more story.
Right, it wouldn't have been any more story. And I know several of my media colleagues that hammered him, trying to get him to respond, He didn't do it. Eventually, yes, he decided to make mention of why she was released from her service.
Subsequent to their release.
Yeah, subsequent to their release. And I don't see that as being petty at all. I see him as validating why he did it.
Well, so again, not without focusing on that issue, what really alarms me is people look to the media to give them information, fair, balanced information. And no matter what you put out there, a segment of people are going to believe it, right? So that's just the way it is, especially if people are you have a following.
But
right?
Editorials are different.
Well, but even an editorial, you're going to have a following. Like you have a column, so you have a following. All right. Now your points have all been very, objective, humorous, middle of the road. You're not going on some kind of, and I'm not saying that that editorial was, but you're not going on some kind of extremist bent where people who just like Rogan will go with whatever she say, right? That you just aren't doing that.
Right.
So you have a responsibility because you have an audience, you have a platform. And the key, what I find alarming, and we say it all the time, is when things just don't make sense to me.
Well, I will say this: it doesn't. It's not a fair comparison just based on the type of column that I do versus the type of columns that exist in other domains. I guess had I been in the position where I was doing that type of column, maybe I would have had a bent. But I don't know.
But the point I'm making is you have everyone who's right now as we sit here, right? There's a percentage of people who like to listen to what we have to say, and they feel that what we're saying is credible. And so if we just go a little bit to the extreme, then that group of people may tend to believe that over what is actual. And we have a responsibility not to do that. This is as far as I'm concerned, a privilege. Huh?
And you also have people who would hear you go to the extreme and say, no, I'm not going there with you.
Well, yes, that's fine. I'm not worried about those people who are self-policed in a sense, right? Who do their own, because that's the other thing. There's an audience responsibility too.
Yes.
For them not to just take everything as gospel.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, as a la Trump. Okay, there's I didn't realize Richard Nixon, when he was when he resigned, 25% of the people still were with him. He still had 25% of the people. So here's a man on tape, right? Disgrace, and people going, no, I with him.
People love who they love. They support who they support.
Anyway, so I just find it a little. I just don't know. But going back to this thing about Facebook, I ran into someone today who I used to exchange a lot with on Facebook, and he was saying how I see not on Facebook anymore. And I said to him, I've been thinking a lot about this. And for one, that element of stress is now gone out of my life. But
you don't post at all?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I hardly ever go on to Facebook to even look at it. And it's a situation, Rogan, where I find like this social media, and I know you may have a different opinion, is almost like a cesspool.
It is.
Because although it was invented to make things wonderful and to have exchange, etc.
Yeah.
The thing about toxins, it only takes a little bit to really tarnish and pollute. That's the word. Pollute things. And I find that Facebook has a lot of toxic stuff. And it's kind of polluted. And I just made the decision. I said, prior to going on Facebook, Rogan Smith, by the way, introduced me to Facebook when we were doing the show. And it's as if all of a sudden I start to exchange with people or have exchange with people who I didn't like or they didn't like me or whatever the reason is, whereas I'd never had that before. Why would I be in that exchange grouping, So it's and you see what's going on with the Donald Trump tweets and the Twitters and the
people feel emboldened to be nasty when they're hiding behind their computers. I don't know.
Especially if it's anonymous.
Oh yeah, if it's anonymous, if it's Ganja Baby 44, you know what I mean, and not Edward Fields, it's a little different.
Ganja
you know what I mean?
Baby 24, and then 44. I have like a picture of a lion as my profile.
Right. You can do whatever you want to do, but and if these people see you in person, it's a completely it's a different ball game. You know
It's
what I
funny
mean?
they don't ever see you in person though. Isn't that weird?
Sometimes they do. You
Yeah.
just don't know
Yeah,
them
yeah,
before
yeah,
you see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel that. Let me ask you. You know, I'm going to make a statement and tell me. I'm going to let you be my gauge. Tell me if this is really too off. I think people with intellect, and I'm not saying that people with intellect won't do the opposite, but people who with intellect will eventually move away from those social media
Yes,
outlets
I
because they
absolutely
can't
agree.
take it.
Yeah. Don't
Does
you
that make
remember?
sense?
But understand, I don't know if you remember when you were on social media and you were going back and forth, and I said I had quit. I don't know if
Right,
you remember.
right,
I
right,
said I
right.
had quit because I'm not trying to,
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't deal with that. So I can imagine when people have a different type of thinking would not feel comfortable in that realm.
Yeah, I just see, there are absolutes in terms of approach, right? So if I walk into a room, I can walk right up to you and punch you in the face, or I can walk right up to you and say, hi, how are you? Okay? The face punching is, I think, unacceptable, right? And that's what happens on Facebook, right? It's just an immediate punch in the face, no kind of the courtesy element or whatever that level, courtesy is gone, the social niceties are gone, and like you say, it's like they're protected behind this wall of this cyber wall. They can be anonymous, and I think that eventually, what you will find, and I think it's happening now. If you were to go through Facebook, you'll find that more and more people who have any form of intellect. Not to say that they can't stay on and it diminishes their intellect, but that they get tired of it. The people who have intellect and who wish to not be caught up in that eventually just move away.
No, but some of them stay right there because they like to see a train wreck. No, there are a lot of people who I like and I respect. I respect their minds, and it always blows my mind that they live for that garbage.
But
so that's not everybody.
You see, that's the
Yeah, I know if it's an
element.
addiction so much as they like drama.
Yeah, maybe so. But there's an addiction element to the Facebook though.
I'm sure.
There's a that whole thing about there are people checking at 2 a.m. in the morning.
That's
I
redundant.
know because I was. Okay, so I mean I know of the addictive element of checking because you were in this mode of just constant information and feedback.
You were checking at 2 a.m. because you were engaged with.
I was literally in a mode of just browsing all the time and just
Really?
checking. Oh yeah. I mean, and I know that there's a high percentage of people who are doing that.
That's too much information.
You will find this is an impact on sleep, on emotional, stability, because you just always, and then this whole thing about being in the circle and
being in the know.
It's a crazy thing. It's not. See, you know what's interesting about Facebook or anything with this? It is definitely not natural. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's just a different.
The brothers down in the Congo ain't dealing with this.
Well, they might not be dealing with that device, but there's still elements of that.
I don't know.
There's still
I don't
elements
think that.
of that.
Tell me. Okay, I'm going to go for you. What's the element of that?
I mean, if you're in a village and you're talking about somebody else, or you're commenting about somebody else doing something,
You ain't doing it anonymously. You're going up to the Zulu say this. You can't go. You can't be Rogan, right? And say, listen, I'm telling you, I don't like you. And well, listen, Rogan. No, I'm Zulu. I'm not Rogan. You can't pretend to be someone else.
I don't know. I don't think it's a new thing. I don't think it's
a definite new thing. It's a definite.
I think
the
technology makes it seem so, but I think we've always done this in some way, shape, or form.
No, we haven't.
Yeah,
All right, so.
You go to the water cooler and you work in an organization and you go to a water cooler and you talk about somebody.
Yeah, but when did smartphones come into being? What year? I don't even know.
I don't know.
Okay. So before that, did we have texting and driving and people getting killed because of that? No. Did we have people walking into the middle of the road while they're looking down at a smartphone and getting knocked over? No, we didn't have that. That was not existing. Didn't exist. Now everyone's walking around like this. No one was walking around. Everyone had two hands before. Down to one hand and little things like that little thing you got on your phone. Okay?
Yeah.
So it has definitely changed. It's like chairs. It'll be interesting to ask the doctor when he comes in. Chairs are not natural.
Yeah, we've had this conversation.
Okay, stooping is natural.
But I can stick with the chairs, though.
I know we're going to stick with the chairs because that's what you know. You can stoop.
You better believe. No,
I can't even stoop.
I can't.
See, you know, the other day you talked about evolution. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And you said, how come we're not evolving now? We have evolved. Me and you can't stoop. Okay.
I'm used to doing that.
That's right. That's an adaptation. That's a modification of your muscle structure, etc.
That's just me. Somebody in the family islands or somebody in New Providence could probably stoop.
Because they kept stooping. They doing some stooping every now and again. Me and you ain't stooping. We don't come here and stoop on the radio.
Maybe we should get rid of
Do you
these
realize?
chairs.
You know, in Asia they stoop to go to the bathroom.
I know that. See, I can't get with that.
But you can't get with it because you're used to the throne.
I can't get with that, boy.
Now, just to show you how bad it is, right? Now they're saying because, and again, we'll have to. This is off what I'm sure we want to talk to Dr. Roll about. But we're sitting on toilets, okay, which is not the natural position. So they say that you're not eliminating properly. So you know what we do? Buy stuff to put your leg up on so you can pretend you're stooping.
No, I'm eliminating properly.
You don't know.
Right on
you don't
my
know.
toilet.
If you get the thing, if you get the thing which raises your legs.
I don't need that.
Okay. All right.
I tell it you.
Okay. I think you don't know if you're eliminating properly.
I know that I'm
going to ask Dr. Roll, your fellow Steve Harvey guy, okay? Because he knows. I'm sure he knows about elimination better than you. Okay.
No
if
way.
you're eliminating properly,
You're so silly.
you're probably bound right up and don't know it.
I'm
going to give you a gift certificate for colon cleansing.
You keep saying
we're going to take a break. Would you take it though? Did you say you would take it?
But don't forget my birthday's next week. But I don't want that as my gift.
Oh boy! See,
you can give me that. That's a sub gift.
No, let me tell you something.
We gotta go to news.
No, we're not going to news right now because that's petty.
How is that petty?
Because I took a perfect
that is
thing.
Not a gift.
Listen. First of all, let me tell you why it's petty, Ken.
That is not a gift for a birthday.
This is what people like her, the lunatics, do. Okay. She was reminding me to get her a gift. That's what it is. It ain't nothing about
my memory's only jogged.
It hadn't even crossed my mind to get the colon cleansing as a birthday gift. But just in case.
But you would give that as a birthday
gift. Just in case you forget that birthday. That ain't the gift, okay? That's petty.
That's the second gift.
Yeah. That's when you stoop. We'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. And our guest this afternoon is Dr. Myron Roll. And he's here with his lovely girlfriend, Maria. But, there are a couple of things we got to get out of the way, and then we can get into the serious business. Now, Dr. Roll is a neurosurgeon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I want to make sure I got all that correct. But I know that having studied neurology or neuro, whatever it is you did, you had to go through the full gamut of the whole thing. So we want to settle right now this issue of the stooping. Okay?
I don't know what that got to do.
Now,
anyway.
We're talking about all these unnatural things that we do. And you see all the time when they say that stooping really is a natural form of how people sat. They didn't have chairs back in whenever. They didn't have chairs. Right. So we've now evolved to where we're sitting in chairs all the time. It's not good for us. It's, but it is what it is. Is stooping the more natural position for elimination? And I'm trying to be, scientific and, all that kind of stuff, than sitting on a Kohler.
So I've heard that's the case, but I can't.
You didn't do the research?
But I cannot claim to have read enough about that. It is not
that's your homework.
It's not the brain of the spine.
Okay.
So
Exactly.
Medical school is not finished. You got to research that and report back. Okay. But it's so funny because we do things, and we'll talk about your profession and your field of study, but we do things that has moved us away from what is natural, and then we kind of replicate it, right? So now someone is making a mint off of having these things that you put in front of your toilet that emulate stooping.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how we do that to ourselves. Myron Roll, you've had a storied history. Let's go back to, now you weren't born here, right?
No. So Mummy was 7 months pregnant with me.
Mummy.
I love that he says
Mummy. There's certain
Let's
things.
just stop right there. Yeah. Hold on to that.
There's certain things that beheminize you right off the top, right?
Mummy.
Like I had Rick Fox once at a function, right? And I was sitting down and I said, Rick, you want to get something to eat? And he said no. So I sat down and I got some macaroni and cheese. And then he said to me, "That's macaroni and cheese."
Yeah, you won.
So what happened with mommy? Now?
Yeah, so mommy was she was 7 months pregnant with me over here, but then eventually wanted to have us go to the States. So she had me in Houston, and then right after birth, I came back here and stayed here for about 3 years. And then Daddy's job at Citibank, as you know, took him to New York, and so I grew up in New Jersey. He just commuted to New York every day, and we would just come back to Nassau and Exuma every summer and stay connected to our Bahamian family down here.
You know, I told you your father and I worked together at City. He was at City Trust. I was at Citibank for many, many, many years, so I know him really well. So you Rollville.
Rollville, Rolltown, Steventon, Barry Terry. Yeah, we got roots all over Exuma, but certainly,
So the Rolls.
Yeah.
So then you ended up in high school. When did you first recognize that you had athletic capacity above and beyond the rest of the folks?
Yeah. So Daddy. He played football for the pros down here, and he kind of
Citibank pros.
Yes, no question. and he kind of put it in my mind and my brother's minds about being athletic and football being a kind of a means to achieving success in sports, and then how football, just the idea of football, coming together as a team, preparing, conceptualizing, having criticism, competing against a team, getting knocked down, getting back up, how all of these things can not only make you a good football player, but then make you a good leader, right? I mean, you can use some of these elements that you practice every day in your walk towards whatever goal it is you had. So it wasn't until maybe middle school I realized that I was better than my competition. And then when I got to high school and I started getting recruited from these colleges all over the United States and getting ranked as a number one player in high school, that's when I said, okay, I might have a future in this
ranked
thing.
as a number one high school. Yeah, that's
number one high school player.
That's a
in
big.
the US.
That's a big. That's kind of a big deal.
Not too bad. Eh?
Yeah, I mean, one out of what, I don't know what one is. So the thing is, what I find interesting about sports, and maybe it's how it's transcended to what you do now, is I had a daughter who was in sports, and she actually had a moment where she left high school, I should say. She was involved in a lot of sports. Got to college, was not recruited. Got to college and went into a really bad place. Because that whole team thing, they call it going into the wilderness, I think, was gone. Okay, and fortunately she was able to join the softball team and revitalized her, right? But you now end up in a field, and because they always say that people who are athletes, and you're now, Maria, with the SBA, who end up in a team type environment, right? Your profession now, is that a team type environment?
Yes, very much so. And I think when I was even interviewing for different neurosurgery residency positions around the United States, Hopkins and Yale and Penn and all these
just
different places.
the crappy ones, but that's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
They said, Myron, we feel like you're going to do pretty well as a neurosurgeon because you come from a team aspect, and medicine is that way. When I go into an operating room, there's me, and then there's the anesthesiologist, and then there's a scrub nurse, and then there's a circulating nurse, and then there's a neuromonitor folks, and then there's a patient who's the most important person.
Right.
And that's a team right there, and we all have to be communicating, all on the same wavelength, all working towards a common goal of fixing whatever pathology, whatever malady is in this person, and that's it's good. It was a seamless transition from sports into medicine,
because in fact most athletes who can't make the transition are those who do not end up in team scenarios. Okay, whether it's in a financial field, whatever, the reality, they end up back on their own, and all the lights and all the, because that thing, and most of us haven't experienced it, where you, from a very, very young age, are on a team. That is a very unique thing that a lot of people, the majority of people, don't get to experience. And but the problem is, of course, if you don't continue it on the backside, so you have a very high frequency of athletes that have a lot of problems. Yeah.
But, a lot of times people will say when they're talking about athletes, they regard them as sort of dumb jocks, and not just you, but other people have definitely dispelled that, because you have people who are doing exceptionally well at school and gone on to other things. You talked about how your father encouraged you with the sports side of it. Talk about your family's influence when it came to the books.
Yeah, it was huge, and that came from both mommy and daddy, but certainly, the premium was placed on education early, and the reward and incentive for doing well in school was much bigger than scoring many touchdowns or getting 30 points in basketball or something like that. So if I came home with straight A's and did well and good remarks from my teacher, I'd get a big pizza pie that I could eat all alone, right? Big pizza, big food. I have 4 older brothers, and they always want to steal my food. Right?
Otto brothers. Yeah. Heard it. We heard it. We picked it up.
And so
Maria, you pick up the little slang every now and again. Okay, yeah.
So they'd always take my food from me, and so I would never eat it I'd never have a chance to do it alone. But when I did well in school, it was all mine, and then mommy and daddy would say, "Y'all can't touch it. This is Myron." So that was great. So early, it kind of placed hardwired into my mind that yes, mommy and daddy are taking education seriously. I ought to as well. And if this makes them proud of me and if this is what they want from us, they made a lot of sacrifice coming from the Bahamas to start over in America. And this is my role and this is my payback for that sacrifice. And I just continue that trend on throughout. And thankfully, having that parallel road of academics and athletics led me to, once I finished in the NFL, I was able to jump on the track of medicine and now doing neurosurgery at Harvard.
Was there something that happened that made you interested inside to pursue medicine? Was there like a defining moment?
Yes. So he's a politician now, but Ben Carson, his book Gifted Hands, as a black neurosurgeon, he, I read his book early, and I said, this science is fascinating. I mean, the brain and having a structure that's less than a centimeter away control a completely different part of the body, that just was fantastic to me and something that really appealed to all of my being, right? And so that kind of got me going that direction. And then in high school, I went to New Orleans and shadowed a bunch of physicians down there and talked to an AIDS patient, learned how to suture, learned how to take blood pressure, and that was kind of a full immersion course into medicine, especially neurosurgery, and I said, yeah, this is it.
How old were you at that time?
I was 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
It always amazes me, people like you. Again, I'm going to draw a parallel, and I don't ever do it, but I'm going to do it today with my daughter because, again, an athlete, and her degree was neuroscience. And I don't know how people take that track because, you excelled in college and high school. And, when she would not do well, and I'm just going to ask you how you felt when this happened. If she didn't get an A, okay, she would feel as if she was failing. And I'm saying, look, you don't go down these two parallel tracks of neuroscience and Division I sports and expect to get A's. I mean, the mere fact that you're doing well, it is a very taxing scenario. How did you handle that? I don't know if people understand that it's not just, you're taking a degree in whatever. You're taking a degree in medicine, pre-med, right, to go on those two, and to be the number one athlete in your school at the time. That is a parallel path that is just extremely unique.
Yeah, and it's pressure that you put on yourself because you have a standard that you try to reach and attain, and I just feel personally I've always worked better under that pressure. If I put fire under myself and I said, look, I'm going to compete, even if I'm not competing against anybody else, I'm competing against myself and where I expect to be, and that always drove me to achieving high marks in school and those things. But if there was a time where I did slip up and didn't do as well, I have a great God that I serve. I pray. I have great family members, a great support staff, brothers, friends, other people who just kind of pour into me and able to allow me to lean on them so they can help buttress my journey going forward. And it's always important to keep iron around you.
Was it difficult? So you're at the Florida. So let's just hop off to Florida State, which is that's just it's a massive thing. Okay, I call it a thing. I went to University of Georgia, as did Maria. She's Go Dogs, Sycamore Forth. I'll have to introduce you to Fred Hazelwood. Maybe he'll give you a free Rolex. He owns John Bull, and he's a huge dog fan. Anyway, the reality is it's a completely different thing from a small high school in New Jersey to this mammoth thing with a lot of pressure. Was it ever difficult? Did you have the grades to do? You got the performance, or did it come easy?
What was most difficult? Not so much the performance. It was fitting into the different personalities, right? So I come down from New Jersey as a Bahamian with a different culture, speaking differently, different family members, different music that I like, right? also a prep school kid, so I'm coming with my shirt tucked in and glasses, going down to Florida where my teammates dreadlocks, gold teeth, goons, listening to different music, eating different kind of food.
Smoking some J.
No question. And so the personality was difficult to kind of mesh. But this is how I got in, right? So we had these things after our running, our conditioning, where we would have to box each other. Our strength coach would let us box with gloves on, headpieces and everything. And they tested me. They were like, let me see what this boy from New Jersey, this Bahamian, let's see what he can do. And so they put gloves on me, and I boxed one of the southern country, real hard goon kind of guys. I beat him up. And after that, it was like my welcoming into the team.
So
they were like, they were like, hey, this smart guy, he's one of us. So let's let him come in, and it all kind of worked out. So the personality mesh was probably the most difficult thing to kind of figure out, but it all worked out.
Saying that, this is another thing, and I'm sure Rogan experienced it. I experienced it. We both, studied in the States. Do you find in a country like America, which is, we were in the South, you were in the South, Rogan was in the South, so that's a dynamic, okay? And by the way, I went from Minnesota. I was in Minnesota first, so I'm having that transition from up north, where they don't realize, up north, the war's over. Okay, you never hear about in the North, how about them Rebs? Okay, whereas in the South you always hear how about them Yankees, right? How did you as a Bahamian blend better into the overall society than say your fellow African Americans?
So, one thing that I would hear from the African American population in the South was that they were a little bit jealous or envious that I had a culture to pull from. When I would speak to them about Sir Lyndon Pindling or Junkanoo or some of our music, right, Ronnie Butler, they were like, oh, well, what do we have? Like, they're trying to grab. They have friends who are Nigerian who can come in fully dressed in Nigerian garb. They have friends who are from, Barbados or other parts of the world, and they have these different festivals and things that they can grab to. And they look at me and they say, man, you got this too. And I want, what is our history? Is it slavery? Is it Negro League baseball? So there was a little bit of envy that I perceived in that respect. But at the end of the day, we're all black, right? And so we're all, we might have been at different parts of the diaspora at some point, but at the end of the day, when you're in America, in a place that, as you guys know, it's kind of rooted in a division, and as you see now with the politics, that it's very divided in with an undertone of racism and classism. We all were fighting the same battle at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break. Our guest this afternoon, and we're really happy to have him, is Dr. Myron Rolle, who's accompanied by Go Dogs. And, for the dogs who know what that means. And we'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with my personal neurosurgeon, Dr. Myron Rolle.
I don't even know if you can afford him.
Well, once I say that, I'll take part of it. It's the thing. Dr. Myron Rolle, who, if you don't know, was were you in the first round draft pick?
Sixth round.
Was a Rhodes Scholar. Was your team a championship team, Florida State?
No.
Okay, well, we'll say it anyway. No one can hear over there. Championship team, Florida State, Rogan. By the way, Rogan Smith and you, I don't know if you heard on the air, you have something in common. And with me, I happen to own a comedy club. And many, many years ago, when we could afford it, Steve Harvey was our guest, one of our first comedians. And, of course, Rogan also appeared on Steve Harvey.
Not for an interview, but to play a game with Steve.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Why you got to diminish yourself? Just say you appeared on Steve Harvey.
It's not the same thing, but
Did Steve ask you some questions?
Yes, he did.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
Yes, and he did call my name.
There you go.
Okay, you're right.
There we go. Pick yourself up, man.
Matt, I remember when his interview went viral. I mean, everybody was so happy and so proud of you.
Are you aware of the fact that Bahamians are very cognizant of you?
You know what? Yes, and I have a story about that. So yesterday we went to Eleuthera, right? And and we stopped in Bryland, and I went to this. It's called.
See, just stop. Once again, we're going to stop at these moments because an average person who's lived their life in the U.S. would never say Bryland. Continue.
You're very connected.
Yeah. Continue.
So we went to Tingham Village Hotel, right? So and I had to explain to her what Tingham was. But anyway, so we went there, and so we're eating there, and or stopping in to see the owner. Her name's Juanita, a wonderful young lady. And she's
not Bressetier.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, I know her.
And so we're talking, and she's like, yeah, so you know, what's your specialty? And I say neurosurgery. She said, do you know the Bahamian football player's a neurosurgeon? We're so proud of him. I said, well, you're looking at him. And she goes, oh my gosh. And so it happens.
I went to school with her sister Valerie Percenti. The Percentis own there in Harbor Island, Bur Island. See, I'm not even baby now. So there's an issue that has been extremely discussed over the last 5 to 10 years, and that is the issue of concussions. As I told you, my kid, I only have one, has had some concussions. But it's funny, we grew up, we rode bicycles, scooters, we fell down, we hit our head.
Yeah.
You get pawed in your head with a softball, but not a softball, but a whatever. You get hit. You're getting hit all the time. And on bicycles, no one had any helmets. Okay, roller skating, you're roller skating down a hill. Okay, so either we are a bunch of mutants, okay, or we didn't seem to be impacted to the extent that people seem to be impacted now. Maybe that's a thing of evolution again. But this is a serious problem, correct?
It is.
Now, you played football, which is probably the most violent sport known to mankind. Other than roller derby.
There's others.
Right. And did you ever get a concussion?
I did. Yeah, 2.
Okay, 2. Now, what impact long-term did you think it had? Well, obviously it didn't have anything on your intellect, but was there any long-term impact?
No long-term impact, but just to comment on, the difference between generations of what we're seeing now versus then. It's only because it wasn't as detected and as aware. We weren't aware of it. Right. Just like autism, right? Autism's been around for a long time.
People just say retarded.
Right, exactly. Or just off, or he's different, right? But now we have scales that kind of detect it. We have early detections, no question. So same thing with concussions and traumatic brain injury. It's a real serious problem. And it's not just football, as you know. It's soccer, heading the ball. It's volleyball. It's softball. All these different sports. Even cheerleading. You have people who fly up in the air and they come down and they hit their head.
Hitting your neck, you can get a concussion.
You can get a neck hit, no question. The linear rotation, and all it is basically your brain is sitting in cerebrospinal fluid, and then there's a skull, right? Skull, cerebrospinal fluid, and brain. And when your body moves in a certain way, your brain hits one side of the bone to the other side of the bone quickly, faster than it's supposed to. It doesn't cause any effect that you can see through imaging, MRI or CT scan, but the symptoms do arise: depression, cognitive issues, visual changes, oculomotor issues, some mood instability, and even just migraines and headaches.
Why can't you pick it up?
Well, so I believe there will become a time when radiologists and scientists come together and find something in a living person that changes in the small microproteins that are in the brain. But right now, just the imaging that we have is not able to pick it up.
So whiplash, that can cause a concussion.
Whiplash can cause it as well.
Yeah,
that's why you have race car drivers who, even though they're bolted in their car, just the moving around, that can cause a concussion because the rotation of the head. What needs to be done with concussions, I believe, not only with more awareness that we need to kind of put on these youth athletes and just people in general, but it's also targeting the concussion treatment to fit the type of depression that is predominant. So what that means is not having a shotgun approach for concussions, but if this person, their predominant symptom is depression, then you treat that concussion based on that predominant symptom. Not, I'm just going to take them out of school, take the lights off, all those standard things that you would think of. Treat the predominant symptom. If you do that, I think that is a way to kind of mitigate some of these symptoms from lasting a long time. And also, I think we need to understand the idea of returning people back to either play or back to society, reintegrating these people. The quicker you do it, the harder it is, because the next time you have to get a concussion, the longer they're going to have to be out and the longer it takes for them to recover. So you have to really take that kind of time off space seriously.
Space. Now that's the shotgun thing for sure. You have to have gaps between that concussion.
No question.
I don't remember his name because I'm sure you're going to remember and you're going to tell me him. What's that guy's name? The movie guy.
Amalu.
Yeah. Have you met him?
I've not met him yet.
Okay. The reason I ask you that is, do you think that you're going to, especially because of your team background, that you're going to head more into the research side of this thing? Or you're going to just stick with the surgery side?
So I think being at Mass General and Harvard, where I am, we are the biggest research hospital.
Harvard, it's a school. Okay,
It
go
is a
ahead.
school, yes. We thankfully we're the biggest research hospital in the country, in the United States, and so there's ample opportunities to get involved in traumatic brain injury and research. So I think it's going to be a balance, maybe 40-60, 40 research, 60 clinical, and I think having a voice, being a former athlete, could get me into the offices of these leagues and these programs, even in front of the government, to kind of assure us, assure other people that we need to take this more seriously. It doesn't look like a broken bone. Some people thought that concussions were a nebulous injury. They just suck it up and walk it off, right?
Yeah.
A broken bone you can see. A tear you can kind of see somebody limping. But concussions,
It's like a mental disease. You don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
What's the worst cases you've seen as it relates to concussions?
So I would say the worst case I've seen is probably a patient. This is not something that a neurosurgeon can do. We do surgery, we operate, but we can't truly operate on people with concussions. But I've seen patients who come through our neurology clinic and have at the age of 30 forget the names of all their children and go into a spiral downward where they had serious thoughts and have devised a plan of ending their life.
Yeah. And that is a result of one concussion or multiple?
That was reported 4 concussions, but who's to say they've had smaller ones throughout their playing career.
Let me go to another segment here for a second. That is this, your connection to the Bahamas. So the Bahamas has, in my view, an almost disproportionate amount of talented people given its population size. And I know that may sound braggadocious, but I'm just thinking of, when you think of the fact that right now as we speak, you've got 2 athletes, well 3, because Donald Thomas is doing high jump, 3 athletes in the Diamond League. We have a population of 300,000. We've got other athletes out there. And these people are tearing up. They're not just winning. You know what I mean? They're tearing up the stuff. I don't know if you saw Shaunae's race the other day in Birmingham, London, England.
I did.
She put on a different speed to take over people to the extent I said they're going to immediately test her. Okay? Because that's not normal. Okay? And then this guy, Steven, same thing. Right. Okay? There is this disproportionate talent pool, seemingly. And I think it has a lot to do with our access to the U.S. and training, et cetera. But how much of that can we bring back to the Bahamas? If not, I mean, I don't expect that Myron Rolle is going to relocate to the Bahamas. You're Harvard, you're doing your thing. But how is it? Is there any possibility that you and others that you may know of who are Bahamian can somehow find a way to bring some of that expertise, some of that knowledge back to these shores?
So, yes, there is, I think. And I think it starts with a collective movement from these individuals that you're talking about.
So finding them first.
Coming together and saying, you know what, no more athletic drain, no more brain drain. Let's make the Bahamas what it can be. There's a lot of potential here, as you mentioned, right? And there's a lot of young people who are ripe with promise, that if they see a Shawnee Miller walking down the street, or they see a Dr. Roll walking down the street, say, you know what, I didn't think that I could be a neurosurgeon before, but I see it now. I feel it now. I didn't think I could be the best runner in the world, but I see it now. I feel it now. So I think it takes us coming together as a collective group and recommitting ourselves to seeing this country rise. And matter of fact, I'm having lunch with Dr. Magnus tomorrow. And we're going to talk a lot about, once I finish at Harvard, how can I get reintegrated here? Because my heart's here. I belong here.
You're a Rollville man.
No question.
Ria, you heard that? He's a Rollville man. Get used to
it. No doubt. So, but it's real, and I think it needs to happen. We've been talking about it for a long time. But you see, even DeAndre Ayton, right? Basketball, Buddy Hield. I mean, it's along the spectrum.
Michael Thompson, Rick Fox,
no question. Aisha Bowe.
You're watching TV, and again, you have to understand, especially my generation, you come from this population of 300,000 people, and you're watching TV. And this is just not normal. And 3 of the 4 people who are being, well, not 3 of the 4, 3 or so people that are being highlighted are from the Bahamas. Okay, so you could be watching Rick Fox, Buddy Hield, DeAndre Ayton, Michael Thompson. I mean, this is, it's an uncanny kind of feeling,
Unreal.
And so you brought up something that I suppose I was going to ask you, but you kind of preempted me, and it's a good thing. And that is, how do you feel in terms of being Bahamian. It would be very easy to be international,
Right.
and there's no harm in that. There's no shame in that. To say, you know what? Look, I'm at the best place in the world, Harvard Medical, neurosurgeon. That's kind of like in a little box of 13 people, okay? So it'd be very easy to be in that box and be doing extremely well. But you seem to be saying that's not the box I want to be in forever.
That's correct. Yeah, and I have to give that to my parents for making sure, even though I left here when I was 3, always making sure that I was connected to my family, our culture, our stories, and just the vibe, right? And so as I'm older now and I'm able to make my own decisions, I say, you know what, where do I feel the most like I'm welcome, the most where I belong, the most where my expertise, the God-given abilities that the Lord has given me, are able to be valued and used, and I think that's right here. And I'm not ashamed of that. I told Maria every time I travel, the first thing that I bring is my flag, right? I mean, it means that much to me. And being able to, when you grow up in the United States and your family's all here, and you see classmates who have uncles or grandparents all around their neighborhood, and I'm like, man, for me to get that, I need to go back to Nassau or go to Exuma, right? And I say, now that I'm of age, I can kind of make the decisions on my own. I say, yeah, this is where I'd like to be. Not leaving behind the connections I made as a Rhodes Scholar in Oxford and Harvard, right?
That only helps.
So bringing that brain trust down here and say, you know what, if y'all want to see what potential and promise looks like, come home with me and you can see it, and create a big think tank here, or start seminars here where you can bring your Harvard intelligence down here, and we can grab some of that from you.
Well, even bigger, right? Even bigger is this element of wrong kind. Sorry about that. I'm good. Even this element of thinking bigger, in the sense that, okay, you've come from where you've come from. There's a connection, there's a network. We're very close to the United States. People want to come here for a vacation and other stuff. You got both the sports side and the medical side. Thinking about, hey, and I mean, literally, I'll show you something that I was literally talking to someone in Clearwater, Florida about just the other day. Creating a sports science facility in Mecca here, so where people that want to convalesce and get their knees back together and their whatever, come back here. You've got the medical side, you've got the sports side. Develop kids in sports. Is that possible?
Absolutely, is possible, and that's the thing that's kind of sweeping the United States too. I mean, you see a lot of universities are putting a lot of money into that, and I think it's absolutely possible here. As you mentioned, a destination place like here. I'm a little biased to Exuma, so if you want to have it, in Exuma, that's even better. But yeah, no, it's not a hard grab to get folks here, and I think the infrastructure is available. I think the manpower on the ground is available, and I think it'd be something that would benefit a lot of people, not just in the Bahamas or in America, but from other parts, even South America. They can come up and study. No question, all over. So
we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this afternoon is Dr. Myron Rolle. I'm just thinking of Maria at the same time, who's accompanied by his lovely girlfriend, Maria. You have now had the pleasure of, being in the mix of some of the greatest minds in the world. How are you adapting to that environment? This is your first year?
Second year.
Second year, okay. That did you find yourself saying, because I think no matter who you are in life, Maria probably felt the same thing, that when you're in college, right, and you're thinking about what am I going to do? You're going to be a doctor. But then you wake up one day and you find yourself working at ESPN or being at Harvard and thinking, how did this happen? Does that go through your mind? I mean, how it happened because you work for it, right? But the fact is, you can work for things, and it's now a reality, right?
Yeah. No, it's it definitely comes some mornings where I'm like, man, I'm here, like I made it, but the journey still persists, and they still want to see you put the work in and grind just like anyone else. I think the thing that I've had to kind of get over, so to speak, during my time at Harvard is dispelling this idea that everything's just gonna be given to me because I came in there with more name than maybe the other residents who were there. Like, oh, this is Myron Rolle, football player, man. This guy's big and bad. He doesn't need to do anything. He doesn't need to put in the work like that. So I dispel all that by working even harder than my other residents to say, look, I'm going to stay late, come early, and you're gonna see my grind.
There's an irony in that, isn't it? Because as a black doctor, forget about the athlete side now, right? As a black doctor, if you had been in a Harvard or John Hopkins or all those other schools you named that, there's almost this pressure also to prove that you're supposed to be there, right? Now you're kind of like at the other end of the spectrum in that, well, you're the big name. Now you got to still prove that you deserve to be there.
Yeah, and I remember talking to other black neurosurgeons, and I said, how would you make it? Like, give me some examples of how you can get through this system that is predominantly white and male, right? It's white male, old white males who are there. They said just be 2 or 3 times better than them in everything you do. Your surgical technique, how you take care of patients, you just got to be 2 or 3 times better than them.
Should you have to do that? I mean, how do you feel?
Say that. That bothers me that you have to.
This is the system, right? This is the system, unfortunately, right? We don't talk about it. But do you ever feel any sort of, I suppose the word would be resentment?
It would make me resentful.
That you have to do that as opposed to, look, I got the skills. Just cool out. Just chill out.
To anybody.
No, absolutely. You feel like, why do I have to do this? What I've accomplished so far and what the Lord has blessed me with has spoken for itself. If you look at the rap sheet and the resume, it could tell you that this man is about hard work. It takes hard work to get to the NFL. It takes hard work to be a Rhodes Scholar. Like all these things can prove that, but nevertheless, you still have a paint job that's different.
Do you ever feel that from them, though? Or is that... because a lot of times I think...
We put it on ourselves, and it's not because they're...
and that's the thing that I always feel kind of weird about in America, right? That there is I'll give you an example. I was in college in Minnesota, and there was a summer I had to do an internship. And so I decided I wanted to work in the Senate, now, which is doubly hard because I'm not an American citizen. So the path to get to that is very hard. So I talked to my friends who were from Chicago, black American guys, and I said, what are you going to do this summer? I said, well, I'm going to try and get an internship in the Senate. Don't waste your time on that. That was their response to me. Don't waste your time with that. You're not going to get that. But of course, later on I got it, and so they said to me, well, how did you get that? I said, well, I applied.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm wondering how much of it is, like Rogan said, kind of you feel like that because you're the anomaly, not to use a word, you're the anomaly in the system as opposed to the norm.
Yeah, I can't tell, I can't speak for them, but what I don't want to do is give them any reason to doubt, right? Give them any room to say, oh, this is the chink in this man's armor. No, you're not getting that from me. I will outwork you, I'll outperform you, and every aspect you say, you know what, this guy's just plain and simple better than me, even though he is darker than me and comes from a different place. He's still outperforming us. Is there a point
you think you get to where you're going to say the same thing here again? Is there a time, Maria's probably, you got the same thing in your field, you're a black woman in a sports man's world thing, where you feel, oh, okay, everything's cool, or do you never feel that way?
Oh no, I it's hardly ever a feeling of feeling content. For me, that personally,
I don't mean content. I don't mean content. I meant accepted. That's what I'm talking about. And I often wonder if even white people who are striving are also, because we're all people at the end of the day, and you always want to feel that you've been accepted, that you've reached the mark. Do you think even they feel that?
Well, I can't speak for them, but for me personally, it's not the end goal for me to be accepted by them. Be respected by them.
Respected, right,
no question, absolutely. I want you to respect my work and what I've done, and give me the same respect that you afford to other people. Where I'd want to be accepted is around my family, the people I love, and the country that I love. For them, it's, look, I want you to give me the same professional courtry you give everyone else, and we'll go from there.
I misused the word. Respect is the word I should have used.
Absolutely.
And do you feel, you've been there 2 years now. There have been people who have been there for 40 years, I guess. But do you feel that you're finding your way to where, some doctor who had been there 40 years is talking to you as a peer as opposed to a subordinate?
Yes, we have a very a good culture, I think, at Harvard, where If you show your mettle and you take good care of patients and you put them first and you're kind of following the right trajectory, then they'll add more responsibilities to your plate, and then they'll start talking to you like a colleague, and that's good. When you get to that point and you're attending, your head doctor, as when they'll start talking to you and asking you, what are the plans for this patient? What would you like to do, Dr. Roll? And I said, boom, I give it to them, and then when they say, yeah, that's good, you're like, man, all right, all's well, it's good.
Do you ever experience any insecurities? You seem like a pretty confident guy, and I would think that lots of people admire you for what you've accomplished, but when you're at home by yourself and you come home from work, I mean, do you have those thoughts? Do you entertain those thoughts?
Yes, at times, for sure. You don't always get things correct. Sometimes you would hurt a patient, and you're like, well, what can I have done differently in this situation? Never on the table. I never lost anybody on the table, but there's certain decisions I might have made about their care that could have been done differently. That sometimes I think to myself, well, if I read a little bit more, maybe I could have done this better. And those points, again, I lean on the people who love me and have my best interests at heart and will talk me through it, right? And kind of guide me through those moments, because sometimes you don't want to express those deep feelings with your co-doctors because they're going through their own stuff, and you need to kind of get away from that medical
so competitive
space.
They could use it against you as well.
No question. So I try to get myself out of that medical space and into people who have no idea what a subdural hematoma is.
That would be me.
Of course I know what that is.
I don't know what that
It's a bruise.
It's a bruise. Okay.
See, I told you long ago, one of the things I discovered way back is people just got their jargon. Okay, that's how they alienate you. They use their jargon.
That's true.
Okay, so he uses what is it? Whatever it is.
Subdural hematoma.
I say Bruce. Okay. But listen, let me ask you a question. When I think a surgeon has always been a revered profession. Okay, because it's life and death. Now, for me to feel less, low esteem, self-esteem, I just say they're mechanics. Okay, but that's how I deal with it. But the reality is, you're a mechanic with my life. Okay, when that time comes, and I don't know if this is something you deal with in medical school, but I don't think you can deal with it until it happens, where there is a patient that you lose. How do I don't think I've ever asked a doctor this. How do you deal with that? Or is it just that's what you signed up for and it can happen?
So, as you mentioned, surgery is not a trivial thing, especially neurosurgery. Any work on the brain, we open up somebody's skull. Imagine, that, right? You're taking off somebody's bone and you are penetrating and accessing their brain, which to me is...
by the way, they are awake, right? When you're doing
some are awake. If you're doing it around the language center on the left side of the brain, they'll be awake. But other time, no. They'll be under general anesthesia. But that, and also the spine, too. I mean, the spine can make you paralyzed if you get the spinal cord the right way. And so I think we all go into, as surgeons, at least we would hope, as neurosurgeons, go into understanding that this is a real thing and it's a real risk that something catastrophic could occur. And if the catastrophe leads to somebody dying, it's hard.
Or being paralyzed.
It's hard. It's hard as talking to the family members of that patient and trying to,
But how do you get back on that bicycle? They always say when you fall off the bicycle, get back on. But you've not had the experience yet.
Exactly. I have not had that yet. But in speaking to our attendings who have had that experience, their best thing is to go back in. And go back in with a case that has a higher success rate, so to speak. Like you start off with something with another co-doctor just to kind of get your bearings back again, just so you're more comfortable. Because the longer you stay out, the more you keep thinking about it. When it's time to make that very important incision right near that nerve.
You don't need any doubt.
No doubt. So the best way to dive right back in as much as possible and have support of your other co-doctors to kind of help you get through it all. But we are creatures of habit, and the more practice, the more we do, the more familiar, more comfortable we get with situations, and we kind of work it through that way.
How many surgeries have you performed?
I've done close to 1,200 now.
Yeah. Okay, that's only like one or two. So 1, 2. You see, take out the zeros. There's something else that I feel compelled to ask. Now, Bahamian doctors or people who study medicine now are almost kind of pushed into going to certain institutions because of the high demand of people wanting to go to medical school in the United States. So it's not the easiest thing to get into medical school, period, and certainly very difficult to get into U.S. medical schools. Is there any sort of, I don't want to, I guess I'll use the word lifeline or pathway where you as a doctor at that hospital could see for the benefit from exchange? So this is postgraduate, not graduate, of seeing Bahamians come into your facility on an exchange basis, 6 months, a year, whatever, and back, and someone come here so that they can get that kind of a cross experience.
So I think that is possible. I think that the University of Miami is actually doing that now. Okay. Speaking of Dr. Magnus, the chairman there at University of Miami, Dr. Levy, is speaking about doing an exchange like that. For us, I think what would help, especially Bahamians who are interested in medicine, and particularly if they want to do neurosurgery, is getting up to us and doing research for 6 months or a year. Mm-hmm. That separates, I think, a lot of applicants from others. We have bright students here, of course. We have capable students who are willing to put in the work. But I think when they look at all the applicants and they say, well, what does this person have? What doesn't this person have? It is the research aspect, and it could be on anything. But you come up to Boston and you get in contact with me or other. I don't know if you know Demetria Gibson. So she's up at the same hospital I am. Right?
Oh yeah, what is she practicing?
She is internal medicine, I believe. Okay. And so we've consulted patients on and I asked her, how's your mother?
Allison Gibson's daughter.
Right, exactly. And Allison Maynard Gibson's daughter. And so come up and speak to us and get around some of our research. Bolster your resume, bolster your application, your CV, and then I think that gives you a much better shot at getting into one of the prestigious medical institutions. And then, as we talked about earlier, once you get that medical knowledge, you come back home and you treat the people here. So
I think that it's, and I'm going to go into the last segment, but I think it's very difficult sometimes because of life, right? I don't know if you have your first mortgage yet. But when you hit that first mortgage and other things that I won't say in this room because of people in the room, but when you hit that first thing where all of a sudden life becomes kind of a runaway train, right? You've got kids, you've got mortgage, you've got this, you got the next. It is harder to then disconnect and come back, even though the intentions are there. You think that's going to be hard for you? To disconnect and come back?
I don't, because I've always looked at my journey as being 1 foot in here, 1 foot in America or elsewhere. When I was in Oxford, obviously in the UK as well. And I think that
that's the beauty of the dictionary.
Pardon?
Oxford. They do the dictionary?
Yes, Oxford. They do the dictionary. That's right. Correct. They film Harry Potter there. All that stuff. Yeah. That kind
it's a kind of shoe. Yeah. It's a kind of a shoe. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. All that. But no, I don't think so. I think with enough resources, enough help, enough.
And constant contact.
And constant contact, no question. And having the network to make it possible. I think it can happen, and I think others can do it as well. It's just a goal what you want, right? And I've been a goal centered person my entire life, wanted to be a neurosurgeon, wanted to be an NFL player, wanted to be a Rhodes Scholar, wanted to one day, if public service or if philanthropy at some major level like the Clinton Global Initiative, something like that can occur where I can kind of impact large scale populations and generations. If that's a possibility, let's set that goal and then just do everything you can to pursue it.
I think too, Myron, that with the fact that you are first seeking out this network of Bahamians, if that is a kind of a objective, then it makes it easier because you move back with a kind of a team. I'm going back to that team thing with that kind of impact. Leaving with you with this, we got a couple more minutes. I hate to be punny, but the role, Dr. Role being a role model, role. Okay. It's more puny than punny, but anyway, okay. Take your hand off your head. You're making me feel uncomfortable.
Well, that's comfortable for me to have my hand on my head.
You're making me feel like, you said puny. There you go again.
No, it was like that for 10 minutes.
there are young folks driving home listening to Dr. Myron Roll. There are lots of people who see Dr. Myron Roll, and I know this is cliche, but is it, if you really dedicate yourself, and I know I've nowhere as accomplished as you are, but I know you just got to put in the work. What would you say to these kids? They're getting ready to go into school right now. School is getting ready to start. There are a lot of kids who may not have had the background that you and I had in terms of being able to access educational opportunities, etc. But there are kids in those classrooms who have the same dreams that you do. What would you say to them?
So I'd say be aggressive, and that means nobody's going to sit and just give it to you, right? That means going out and seeking the mentors, going out and seeking help from teachers after hours. If hey, I'm struggling in this class and I just want to figure out how should I study for this? Should I read something different? Should I form a study group? Should I be focusing on ABC or DEF? What is going to be the focus of your lecture? Finding conferences that perhaps you can get some money for to go to and explore. Finding books that you can read that can open up and enlighten your mind and kind of give you a breadth of possibilities, rather than saying, I'm just going to stay on this rock and this is how I'm going to live my life because my mummy did it, my mummy's mummy did it, my mummy's mummy did it. No, it's being aggressive and going after, right? It starts with the willingness to want to make these things occur. And if I could talk to one of them, I say, look, man, find somebody else who you see as what you want to be, and pursue that and continue striving every day to make that a reality for you. My goal was Ben Carson, right? I had him. This was my guy. Black guy, neurosurgeon, boom. He looks like me. Let's make this happen. Right. And so every day the steps were towards that, not towards anything else, but towards that. And football came with it because I was very good at it, and God gave me the ability to do it. And in that process, I made new friends. I gave my life to Christ. I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. I built homes. Like that process just kind of occurred, and these blessings occurred with it. But the end goal was, hey, let's be a neurosurgeon, save some lives on an operating table.
It's challenging for a lot of kids who obviously have other influences, a lot of negative influences. I don't know this, and I don't know if you know this, but when I say know this, how hard it must be to have those influences not overpower you, And if, again, and I don't want to be repetitive, if there are kids in that circumstance, not what they say to themselves, okay, but what would they say to those influences, or how would they avoid, push those things back to then go on their goal, on their journey?
I mean, those influences, those distractors, those derailers, they're going to be there, right? And it's hard to say, I'm going to live my life devoid of any of these things that could take me from where I want to be. That's almost living in a bubble, and no one lives in that, right? And so I think it does go back to a self-discipline that says, yes, this is here, but this won't be me, right? This is in this world, but this won't be my world, right? You can exist here, but my direction is so different. My direction is so real that I'm going to make a different move. Where y'all going right, I go left. And yes, I think as much as you try to fight, you almost will never win just fighting those temptations, just tooth for tooth, saying like, I just want to go at it and try to knock you off. No, it's like, let that be it, right? If that's somebody else's path, that's what they want to choose, great. But that's not for me. And I don't have to be a statistic like these other folks who get caught up in that tornado and that wind and then can never get out of that situation. And so
it's almost like a football metaphor in there somewhere, that when you see the people coming at you, you got to find a way to avoid them. You don't just always run into them, right?
You got to find a way. Because at the end of the day, we can't look at you and say, you know what, well, I'm sorry it didn't work out for you, and you got sucked into this whirlwind of these temptations. We're gonna ask you, did you accomplish your goal?
Yeah.
Did you make it?
Yeah.
And you have to look at yourself
to avoid that.
And what did you do? Yeah. What did you do? Don't blame anyone else.
Right?
We don't have time for that. We need you to look at yourself and say this can occur.
Yeah. Stop. He did for that. Okay. So we catch him, right, Rogan? We got to catch him.
I like it.
Dr. Myron Roll, listen, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Every time, let me tell you something, Rogan. You may not know this. When I do we don't, as you can see, we don't come here with a bunch of paper and producers and stuff, right? And when we do these type of shows, I always say before the show, what the hell am I going to talk to this guy about? I've never met him before. We've never had a conversation. In fact, one of the people that should we meet before and talk about the topics? I just don't do it. But your story is one that's real, and so it just, there's no problem with getting through a show for an hour. So thank you for coming, and I'm sure we will run into each other again sometime.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Maria, nice meeting you. Eminem, Rogan Smith. See you on Monday. That's when we can be off. We got the second day advantage. Yeah, second day advantage.
Whatever.
Okay. Ken, we'll see you. Have a good weekend, folks.